Well, hey folks, this is Bob Ferguson, and it's really a delight to be here today with my buddy
Galen Saturley, and I work for my family's company called Breadtopia, and also with my family and wife, we started a business called The Collective here in Fairfield.
Terrific. So today we're going to be talking about, let's see if I can get it right, the Southeast Iowa Regional Community Food Web. Now, what you may ask is a food web. It really is a local food system. Ken Meter from Crossroads Resource Center in Minneapolis, north of Minneapolis, I think, has coined that term. He has been doing analysis of food systems, local food systems, up to state food systems for, I think, 40 years. And his notion of a food web is something that really caught my attention. And a lot of the work that I've done in the past through the SLC and a lot of the other civic stuff and just my own studying, I came to the conclusion that we really need something very different than the incumbent food system. We have very abundant food, but we don't really have super highly nutritious food. If you just look at the stats, the health stats for the U.S., it's not really very encouraging. And it's also not very resilient. And we found that out with two events, the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. You start disrupting supply chains like that, and you have very, very long, very fragile, very finely tuned supply chains. You get the slightest little bit of a bump or a big bump, and all of a sudden you have empty grocery shelves and that kind of thing. So just from a purely practical standpoint of serving our own best interest, it's really a great idea since we have the best farm ground in the world. We have a relatively stable climate still, changing but stable, and we have water. Why shouldn't we be growing more of our own food? And more to the point, why shouldn't we be processing more of our own food, distributing more of our own food? So really the food web is a local resilient food system made up of every aspect that it would take to get local production produced, distributed, and consumed. So that's my perspective, and Galen has a perspective of being I'm a guy from the outside looking in. I'm kind of I don't have any real purchase in that, but Galen does. He is a food manufacturer. So I'd like you to talk, Galen, about sort of what's the landscape that you have, and what kind of challenges do you have relying on sources of supply, from afar, and what could we do if we were able to localize supply and manufacture and distribution more effectively?
Yeah, I mean it's a complex system, but to put it really pretty simply, it's we have ingredients and we have our final product, and when you have a disruption in the you're sourcing for ingredients, you're really, you don't have anything to sell at the end of it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
fundamentally,
you have to create something. So, by having creating relationships with growers and sources for ingredients, we essentially can create a relationship, and the relationship is a conversation we can have. We can know immediately if we're going to have less butter, for instance, right? If we are going to be out one ingredient, one resource. So if we have that relationship, we have that conversation, and that conversation helps us adjust our products, our output, and we're not stuck with nothing to sell.
Exactly. Now, one thing you said is really, really important. One of the godfathers of this effort is Dr. John Eichert, legendary agricultural economist. And when we were talking about this, he was describing his notion of what a hyperlocal, stitched together, webbed system across the whole of the United States and, in fact, around the world, what it would look like. And he said, it is important to have an area large enough so that you can scale up. And if you just have one little town or even one county, you're probably not going to put a grain cleaning outfit in there, or you're not probably going to be able to put a meat packing operation in there. But we conceive this as a 9-county area, all of the southeasternmost part of Iowa, starting with Washington County, Wapello, Jefferson, Henry, Des Moines, Louisa, Lee, Van Buren, and Davis. I think that's 9. And so that's a population of about 100,000 people. In a population that size, you can get processing. And you can support processing, particularly if you're going even slightly out of that particular set of counties. We may not be the most efficient of the processors, but we'll be efficient enough to be able to make it economically viable. So the idea of this is to make it so local with so few entities outside extracting money out of it. Yep. Leaving the money inside. So if local growers are growing, and if we do financing, we do it with local money or a locally owned bank, all the money continues to circulate around, or a lot of it circulates around in this region. It doesn't leave. And that's a key element for making this economically viable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, what I would love to do is have the connections with the growers, right, the farmers, in that, you know, we can price our manufactured products in that the farmers actually get a larger cut. Yeah. You know, because if we're cutting out that middleman or the multiple middlemen that we are dealing with in our food system right now, then we're able to, you know, everyone locally gets a larger piece of the pie.
Exactly. And that another thing that John said was very important. He said the incumbent system is based strictly on efficiencies and dollars. Get big, standardize, and make everything in a commodity as much as you possibly can. That is the model. In this model, the money is important, but the money is not the main thing. The money is a design criterion. You have to have enough money in the system. There has to be enough profit for everyone to continue on and to grow. But he said a system like this is based primarily on relationships. Right. And that is the key difference, what you had mentioned. And so those relationships staying strong and staying open, it's a much, much, much more flexible system to operate in. And is it difficult? Sure it is. You know, it's aspirational, and yet there are areas of the country that are doing this very well. If there's anything that I would recommend anyone who's watching this video, run, don't walk, to buy Ken Meter's Creating Community Food Webs. It is pretty shocking, actually. There's some really shocking statistics in there about what the reality of the farm economy has been in the last 100 years and what the reality of what has been extracted out of the rural area. But I'll just give you one quick statistic, which was really amazing. One of the things that we want to do with our food web is start even at the home gardening level. We're already doing with the Fairfield Garden Initiative. Super successful. Build this from the home garden, community garden, and then out to more localized production. Now, little quiz. In 2017 dollars, what do you think the value of all the products produced on the farm that were either consumed by the farmers or bartered? About 40% of the commerce, where my grandparents were on farms in northern Missouri and southern Missouri, subsistence farms. My dad's farm was a strawberry and sorghum farm. My mom's was a dairy. But they grow their own stuff. If they didn't grow their own stuff, they wouldn't have eaten, right? It's particularly in the Depression. So the value of all of those goods and services produced for on-farm consumption or for barter in 2017 dollars in 1910 was $40 billion. What do you think it is today? It's $100 million. There's a very, very big difference between $40 billion worth of economic activity and 100 million. So we have in most important ways really lost the capacity to grow ourselves and to trade. And so that's one of the aspirational aspects of this, is to put this together basic from the home garden all the way up. So
fantastic. Yeah. I'm excited about it.
It's very exciting. And as John Eichert also says, the major asset that sits in rural areas that can't be moved is the land. So he said, if you're going to really revitalize rural America, you pretty much have to start with the land and agriculture and building back the local food system. Then you can start thinking about building back a more robust version of other elements of the economy, and particularly with additive manufacturing, with advanced manufacturing. There's just so much we can do. And so one of my conceptions is to work with NuboCo, which is an accelerator in Cedar Rapids, and Mike Heaton over in Mount Pleasant, who's got an accelerator there, to work with them to put business accelerators in these small areas, in the towns, so that entrepreneurs have a place to go. They have some kind of help, as it were. And so it'll start with food, may start with food. There may be accelerators doing all kinds of things. But by this way, we can stimulate the web of economic activity that is more locally driven. So I think that's what we're about, right? Isn't it?
That's absolutely what we're about. There are so many business opportunities within food that could really support a lot of local jobs, everything from the farmer to the manufacturer to the retailer, that can really stimulate our local economy.
Great. Well, folks, that's what we're about. We're going to be convening in May representatives from as many of these counties as we can invite, and I think we'll do pretty well. And we're going to have Tara Johnson, who's been here a couple of times doing boot camps. In fact, you attended one of those.
I did.
And
yep.
She's been a consultant for you.
Yes. Yeah. No, she was very, very instrumental in how we approached the growth in our business. It was very, very helpful.
And she loves Fairfield. And
That's
since many of you know that we were just designated a Smart 21 city, we competed with 400 cities across the globe, and we were named as one of the 21 most intelligent connected cities in the world.
It's fantastic.
And so this is all going to kind of flow into this also. So I think that's what we have for you today.
That's great. Thank you.